Hello again. Welcome to our study. Well, here we are, section number 4, study number 4 in Dinosaurs in the Bible. We'll finish this study here if we could possibly finish this massive undertaking. So the question once again, are there dinosaurs in the Bible? Well, we have the creationists and we have the evolutionists, and the debate goes on and probably will as long as man exists. So the question is this: do we see them in the Bible? Well, let's find out what God says. Father, once again, thank you for this place that we live, and thank you that you have the book that you've given us to understand certain things and have kept certain things from us. The important part is our eternal salvation. That's what the book is all about. Bless us in our endeavors to understand these truths, and we'll give you thanks and praise as we seek to serve you in greater ways, and we'll give you thanks for it in Jesus' name. So, Dinosaurs in the Bible, study number 4. Well, the evolutionists are going to tell you that, without question, the dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. Well, here's what we understand. They affirmed an asteroid hit the Earth and caused such a cataclysmic change in the Earth and its climate, these creatures died. Well, any fossil of a dinosaur that is found is quickly carbon dated and added to their belief that their theory is not conjecture, but it's scientific fact. And as we know, carbon dating is not as accurate oftentimes as they depict it to be. Well, should the mention of creation be brought out, the scientific community finds thousands of reasons to scoff and dismiss such a notion as flawed and irrelevant. The very idea that there is a creator God who formed the universe takes faith. Well, faith cannot be scientifically proven, for there is no data to support it. In other words, faith doesn't compute. Additionally, man, what they say, did not evolve for another 3 million years after the dinosaurs became extinct. Is that true? Well, here's what we find. Fossilization is a rare process where biological remains are preserved in the earth crust. It requires rapid burial in sediment to prevent decay, followed by mineral replacement, where the groundwater fills empty cellular spaces and turns organic structures into stone. Extreme pressure, so it's rapid, and it's extreme pressure also necessary for carbonized fossils. The question is asked, how is something fossilized? And what determines fossilization exactly? Well, the survival of DNA within dinosaur bones would be powerful evidence against the millions of year age for those fossils. The findings of dinosaur DNA would support the Bible's flood and the reason these animals became extinct. It was a team in England confirmed the existence of soft tissue known as keratin in fossilized lizard skin. The team showed that collagen has survived in the fossilized bone of a mosasaur. Since the researchers believe these fossils are 50 to 70 million years old, they need to explain how fragile biological molecules can survive so long. So far, the explanation of how this tissue can survive for millions of years has not been answered. The Mosasaurus was a giant marine reptile that dominated the oceans, obviously so. Well, while early ancestors lived partially on land, the Mosasaurus evolved into a fully aquatic predator. Well, the question for us is this Leviathan that is described in the book of Job, chapter 41? Looks pretty close. The realized fossilization shows signs that it happened quickly and under extreme pressure. Soft buried animals like squid and jellyfish have been fossilized, as well as the animals in the process of fighting or eating one another. Some have even been fossilized as they were giving birth. The global flood would have created the perfect conditions for a fast fossilization. In other words, a lot of pressure very quickly. The cataclysmic events we see in the book of Genesis make this act quite possible. Alberta, Canada is a famous dinosaur fossils. There's a grave site packed with fossils. Over 8,000 have been already been uncovered, and they estimate there could still be hundreds more in an area the size of a football field. The researchers asked what could cause such a mass death of these animals in one spot. Well, swirls of sediment from fast-flowing water are suspected, and the unknown event that led to this jumbled burial is thought to be a flash flood of some kind. And for us, how about a flood of biblical proportion? Mass graveyards like this one point to the reality of a global flood. Such a flood would have rapidly overwhelmed the creatures, including whole herds of large herbivores like these, deeply buried them away from scavengers and microbes. These dinosaurs were overwhelmed in an instant, in other words, quick and under great pressure. Well, these monuments to catastrophe aren't huge puzzles when we start with the eyewitness accounts of history, and that is God. They are vivid reminders of the enormity of the flood and therefore the enormity of God's judgment on a wicked world as recorded in the book of Genesis. Now, fossil graveyards have been found which point to the fact that these animals could have been drowned and or buried in later stages of the flood catastrophe. For example, a fossil graveyard in Grand Canyon's Red Wall limestone preserves billions of marine creatures. They're all buried in the same 7-foot thick layer as if they were swimming along as a group before being catastrophically overwhelmed. In other words, once again, quickly and under great pressure. Well, in 2005, a bombshell report ignited a firestorm surrounding the creation-evolution debate. It all started when paleontologist Dr. Mary Schweitzer discovered soft tissue inside the femur of a Tyrannosaurus rex that was supposedly some 70 million years old. See, this material inside the bone found in Hell Creek, Montana was soft and stretchy, completely unfossilized. The remains of blood and flexible blood vessels were also intact inside a bone that's 70 million years old, supposedly. This is powerful evidence that these creatures for evolution hadn't died out millions of years ago, maybe thousands, but not millions. There would be simply no way soft tissue could survive that long in a hot, dry environment like Hell Creek, one of the most fossil-rich areas in the United States. And her statement was this: when you think about it, the laws of chemistry and biology and everything else that we know say that it should be gone. It should be degraded completely. However, here come the scientists, and here's what they say. Well, some evolutionists denied her discovery. Skeptics claimed that she'd found must be a result of some type of biofilm, an intrusive organ material that infiltrated the petrified remains of the T-Rex. In other words, anything to deny the idea of there being a creator God. However, the biofilm conjecture was permanently silenced shortly thereafter as her team made even more staggering discoveries in 2009. This time they found soft tissue, blood cells, and protein inside a supposed 80 million year old dinosaur. Well, to quell all doubts, her team was meticulous in their work making sure to account for anything that could discredit their research. By 2015, evolutionists were reporting on how an accidental discovery of blood and collagen in several dinosaur bones could rewrite history books and textbooks. Soft tissue have been found in well over 100 fossils, including dinosaurs. All of this devastates this evolutionary narrative. According to a recent study, an experiment established that the discovery of soft tissue inside dinosaur fossils is a kill shot for evolution's deep time thinking. Since soft tissue breaks away very rapidly, certainly much faster than a million years, they just can't figure out there's a person called God, and guess what? He's got the answers. Science doesn't. Well, the evolutionists are fighting back, claiming that they've discovered several ways these soft tissues could have been preserved. The story of evolution desperately needs millions of years. Regardless of devastating evidence, evolutionists continue to grab at anything to explain soft tissue, no matter how ridiculous the reason. In other words, anything to support their denial of a creator God. Well, millions of years ago, during the crustacean, a small dinosaur curled up like a bird and took a nap and never woke up. Dinosaurs from newfound species died in a pose that sheds light on the evolution of bird behavior. Well, did they find a bird or a dinosaur? And how do they know he took a nap? Maybe he was fossilized. Maybe not. Maybe he just died. Or maybe he got eaten alive. It goes on and on and on. And again, all we see is the denial of a creator God. Because evolutionists are so convinced that their story that dinosaurs evolved into birds, they will often describe birds as dinosaurs, even living birds. But as common sense tells you, if it looks like a bird and acts like a bird, as much as we can answer that from the fossil record, then it was probably a bird. You see, never underestimate anyone who is assured that what he believes is without question the truth, especially in the scientific community. To agree with biblical facts, they risk credibility among their peers. This type of thinking would be destructive to their credentials as modern thinkers. Well, the surveys show that about 21 to 30% of American academic and research scientists identify as Christians, which is notably lower than general public. Among all the scientists, approximately 51% believe in God or a higher power. These are scientists. So now what? What are we going to do with all this? Well, where this study takes you, your decision. Should you embrace the idea that the Bible is the authoritative source for God's creation? And we've done our job here. If not, then there are more questions you need to ask for yourself. Say, while the questions you ask are valid, the answers you seek may never be revealed while here on this earth. See, God has another time and place to do just that. God has another time and place to vindicate his purpose. What is certain to any open mind is that there is a God that loves his creation and wants to spend eternity with them. So the final question is simply, will you be in the group when your days here have been exhausted? Or will you be searching for proof as to when the dinosaur died? Okay, Marco Polo. He's going to end this study for us. Well, he lived during the 13th and 14th century AD. Now, in his book that he wrote, The Travels of Marco Polo, he documents much of his exploration into the regions of the world. Well, he finds snakes and huge serpents 10 paces in length and 10 spans in girth. That is about 50 feet long and 100 inches in girth. As a forepart, near the head, we have 2 short legs, each one with 3 claws, as well as large eyes and a loaf, and very glaring. Eyes larger than a loaf and very glaring. The jaws are wide enough to swallow a man. The teeth are large and sharp, and their whole appearance is so formidable that neither man nor any kind of animal can approach them without terror. Others are small size, being 8, 6, or 5 paces long. And there's his book if you want to look it up. Well, there's many scholars and purveyors of evolution that dismiss his travels and his apparent description of the animals as he supposedly saw. As far as the description it refers to, there is a stark resemblance to the king of the dinosaurs, T-Rex. He was discredited, simply stated, T-Rex has been extinct for 65 million years, and this explains it all. Well, it might explain it all to them, but not to us. Not to us who believe that there is a creator God. Now, whether they are extinct 6,000 years ago or 65 million, you know what? It really doesn't matter. What matters is God's point of view. Man is going to live forever somewhere. Where he lives, with him as creator God or the other place, that's within our choice. We choose that. We choose to accept him as Lord and Savior. And you know what? We're not going to have all our questions answered. That's not God's purpose. God's purpose is to allow us to understand. Eventually, man lives forever somewhere. Man will never become extinct. Not like Mr. T. Rex. Well, I trust this study helps you. Might give you more questions to ask. Understand, answers are in the Bible. We'll see you in the next study.